December 27th, and it's going to be the last program of the year 1987 that we'll be recording. And what I wanted to do on this program, which we think will probably be an hour program, is do something a little bit different than what we've done in the past. And that is to maybe reflect on some of the activities of the past year, do a little bit of traveling about the city and see what's going on, talk a little bit about what we expect to see happening in the future. And with me today is my special guest. This is Levy Sanders, who is my son, who is just spending the Christmas holidays back from college in Springfield, Massachusetts. And behind the camera is Nat Air. And before we go any further, I do want to thank the people at CCTV, Nat Air and Lauren Glendavidian and the others, for the tremendous help which they provided me and many of us on cable access, not only for this program, but for the Board of Aldermen programs, the school board programs, the city attorney's programs, the youth office programs, the arts council programs, and other programs. One of the thoughts that I feel very strongly about, one of the things that I feel very strongly about, is that in a democracy, people have got to know what's going on in their own communities. And to a large degree, the mass media does not do that. And I think in terms of cable access, we're making some real progress in allowing the people of Burlington and of our region to know what is happening in their own community. And we're excited about that, and we in fact intend to do everything that we can to expand the concept of cable access, to get more people from the community, not only those associated with government, but people in general on television so that they can better communicate with their neighbors. All right, before we move on to a new location, let me reflect a few things about what's been happening in this building this last year and what will happen during the next year. And that is, while we look at the various problems that the city has, it's important to understand how the city is able to raise the revenue that it needs in order to address the problems. Sometimes I think people think that if they identify a problem, they say, well, we have a problem in Burlington, or we have a problem in the state of Vermont, that's enough. Well, it's not enough, because what one also has to think about is how do we raise the revenue that we need in order to address the problem. One of the phenomenon that has been going on in this country in the last year, and in fact the last number of years, is that the wealthiest people in our country are becoming wealthier. And in fact, recent figures, recent statistics that came out from the federal government show us that 1/2 of 1% of the population of the United States owns, well, let me get out and tell you what it owns. That in fact the 1/2 of 1% of the population owns 35% of the wealth in this country, and the wealthiest 10% of the population own over 70% of the wealth. And the gap between the richest people and the poorer people are growing. It's growing. It's getting worse. And what that means to me is that as I look at the social problems facing our society, and I say, okay, how do we get the money to address those problems? From what part of society should we ask people to pay taxes to address the problems? It seems clear to me that we've got to ask those people who can best afford to pay to contribute to solving the problems rather than going to working people and poor people. To a large degree, the tax system in this country is extremely unfair, and that it asks working people and elderly people and poor people to pay too much, while large corporations and wealthy people do not pay their fair share. So when we have debates up here on the Board of Aldermen, one of the issues that there's always right out there in the fore is how do you raise the money? And one of the reasons we have had a lot of controversy over the last 6 to 7 years since I've been mayor is that I have attempted to raise taxes in other than the property tax, in more progressive ways. The property tax is a regressive form of taxation. And to a large degree here in Vermont, all of the cities and towns are dependent upon the property tax. There's now a major battle taking place throughout the state in order to have the cities and towns break their dependency on the property tax. In the last 4 or 5 years, we have made some success here in Burlington, and we'll talk about that as we travel around the city. When the streets are now dug up, it is not the property taxpayers who have to repair them, but in fact the utilities who do the digging. We're now beginning to get a little bit of money from UVM, not enough money. We have a gross receipts tax, which means that when visitors come and eat in our restaurants or stay in the hotel, they are now contributing toward the tax base of the city, to helping us provide the services that they need. And we also have a classification system of taxation which is asking industrial and commercial property to be paying at a higher assessment than just residential property. So we think we're making some progress. We clearly have a long way to go. But as we look at the problems that we face, it is absolutely imperative that we understand how can you raise the revenue in a fair and progressive manner rather than taking the money from working people or poor people and elderly people. And that's an issue that we debate here all the time and that we'll continue to discuss. Okay.